Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, go for it. Hey, this is just
No,
like
no,
super chill. Go.
no, you're fine. I was just gonna be like, hey, everyone, check out this new episode. It's gonna be us being like, wait, is it working? Is it working? Can you hear me
Yeah.
now? Can you hear me now? My name is Danny Hajjar. I am a media relations professional working for an international nonprofit organization. I'm a huge music nerd. I'm an avid playlist maker. Some would call me the curator of the vibes.
I
And
love that.
I, I'm here because I think music is so fascinating. I think music from our region is super fascinating, and um, I think it tells a story about our identity in a very unique way. And I'm here to support my homie, so that's also why I'm here.
Yes. One of the things that I would see from your Twitter feed is like different playlists. You're talking about different musicians, and it's definitely focused more on like the Arab world and the Arab music industry. So I want to ask you, what makes music such an integral part of culture and identity?
Yeah, I think for us, it's so central. I think our lives for such a long time revolved around music because music for us is very much a form of storytelling. It was our way of communicating our stories, our narratives, our histories through very beautiful poetry that would then be sung. And people would plan their day around live concerts on the radio, which is so incredible.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's continued in some form. I think music is just it's who we are. It's something that is ingrained in us as a people, and we have such rich cultural music culture. We have such beautiful poetry, and I know I've said this before, but we have a lot of singers who have taken that poetry and just put very beautiful melodies to it and very beautiful then instrumental backing to it, for example. And that tradition continues today. I think it's just being reshaped and repackaged and taken to a different level.
That's so true. And when I think of how it's been repackaged, how it's changed from like the times of Abdel Halim and Kalthoum, I wonder, how has Arabic music changed over time?
There are three different things that happened that kind of changed Arabic music. The biggest thing I think was the Cairo Congress of Arab Music in 1932, which was organized by King Fuad of Egypt. What this did was basically bring together composers, ethnomusicologists from the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe, who then came kind of together to, share knowledge and whatever, but really they created a set of proposals for modernization and standardization of Arabic music, which was one that kind of incorporated a lot more European instruments into Arabic ensembles. The other big thing that kind of happened was the invention of the phonograph.
Sitting with the first phonograph, his favorite invention, Edison was famous at 30.
For the first time, music was available at will in the house to those not rich enough to support a private orchestra. The first recording ever made...
the phonograph could only really play songs for a limited amount of time. And so that was something that was very challenging for us because we are very used to, classical Arabic music doesn't necessarily, they're not confined by time, is what I should say. They can go on, they can range for an hour plus. But the phonograph kind of changed that and kind of forced songs to be more, to be shorter. But really the final thing that kind of happened is the rise of the film industry in the 50s and the 60s, in particular in Egypt. I think movies were very, very heavily westernized at the time. And they forced directors and producers to like modify music that would go along with their movies, and were kind of forced to incorporate a lot of Western elements into instruments and just the durations of songs. So those are like the three things that I think happened that kind of helped pave the way for how we see Arabic music now, and how we see, in particular, Arab pop music now. But those are really the three things that kind of took place that influenced all of that.
Yeah. When I think of what it's like to, witness one of these like live performances, I've only seen them like through like, the movies and them playing snippets of them. If it's like a documentary for say Abdel Halim's life, there's this particular thing that happens at the beginning of, an Arabic song that we call Moab. I mean, cafes have now adapted that name. You go to Cafe Moab, things like that. And they've taken that name. And anytime someone asks, like, what does Moab mean? I struggle to figure out how to put it into words to try and describe that. How would you describe Moab to someone who doesn't speak Arabic?
That is a fantastic question. And I've thought a lot about this. If you ever listen to Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, the very beginning of it is just her singing a cappella. That to me is the closest Western equivalent of a mued that I could think of, because that's essentially what it kind of is, right? It's the singer kind of setting the tone for the rest of the song. And it is them carrying the song in the beginning. It's them starting off with the story. And sometimes there are repetitive aspects of it. There's a lot of, elongation of notes and certain tones and things like that. But that's really what it is. It's really just to set the tone for the rest of the song and kind of showcase the singer's talent in that way. But also just to really set the emotion for the song and what is that going to mean. It's really meant to be a very emotional part, an emotional beginning of the song to get everyone kind of feeling something before we get right into it.
Yeah, and I love that. I typically love the Moab because it's like the singer is testing out different notes and you're like hearing different, like what their voice could do. And it's something I feel like, could you say it's representative of the Arab world, or can we say that it's popular in the West as well, but it's something definitely that the Arab world kind of, it's like a thing for us. It's like we're known to have like Moab before a song really kicks up and starts.
I think we are definitely known for that. And I think it's just part of kind of the tarab sort of culture. And tarab is basically just, you go up there and you're really you're very repetitive with the lyrics, you're very repetitive with the songs, but they can last like an hour or so. And it's really just arcs of a story. I mean, Kalthoum was famous for this, obviously, right? Going up there, and she would repeat several parts of the song over and over as part of her tarab. And then, but she was really feeding off the crowd at that point. The crowd wanted her to repeat that. And then when she wanted to move on, they would move on. And, her voice was the one that was kind of the conductor for her backup band. We're not her backup band, but just her band, right? Yeah. Which was kind of interesting. I don't mean to relegate the band that way. They're not backups. They're wonderful. But I always thought that was interesting, that it was really her voice that helped guide the band that way. And then you had others like Abdel Halim, and you had Fairuz do it earlier on in her career. Asmahan, people like that, right? You see some Arab pop stars do it now, but it's very different. It's a little shorter. It's not nearly as repetitive as it probably was. Even with a mued, like a mued used to last like maybe 8 minutes alone.
Yeah.
Now crazy. You have mueds probably lasting 50 seconds. Wow. And then they go right into a song. Like, it's a very different vibe now. But again, I think that part of it is just because of the westernization of Arabic music and just how things have kind of shifted and changed.
Yeah. And we do see that. We see how music has changed over time. I mean, you mentioned how it's kind of like been different from, today compared to years ago. And it makes me wonder, how representative is Arab music of Arab culture?
I think in the Arabic music industry, it is not nearly as representative as it should be. Right? I think the same artists and the same style continue to be propped up. and they continue to have success. And that's not to say that they're not talented. It's the same sort of people that have benefited from the system, right? So for the last 30 years, Amr Diab has consistently been one of the top streamed artists, for example, or top listened to artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Amr Diab. I love Amr Diab. But you could argue that like over the last like maybe 10, 15 years, he's kind of put out the same album every year, except for that one like very awkward house techno album that no one really needed, but it was fine.
Did not like it.
Yeah, no one really vibed with that. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, even, you know, there are other stars like Elissa, Nancy Ajram, you know, Abdel Halim, and it's like, okay, like I like their music, but I can only listen to like songs about love and loss and that way on a very surface level for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too is the Arabic music industry tends to prop up white Arabs who are Levantine, I would argue, or Egyptian.
So true.
A lot of artists are either Lebanese, Syrian, Palestinian, Egyptian, for the most part. There are some here and there that will break through from the Gulf or from North Africa. You know, like Hussein al-Jasmi is one that has just kind of broken through. Qasim al-Sahed is another one. But even them, they kind of adapted some of their music to sound a little bit more of that Arab pop sound, right? So it's interesting in that way. And then even if you think about, you know, the different styles or different beat structures across the region, because obviously we have very different beat structures when you're talking about Moroccan versus Iraqi or something like that. You got Levantine artists who are doing Iraqi music in a very pop way, in a very, very pop superficial way. So you're not even at that point letting the Iraqi artists be the ones that are uplifted, right? It's Lebanese artists who are doing Iraqi music, which I think is just, that's something. And we haven't even talked about, you know, Afro Arabs or Black Arabs who are also doing incredible music, or indigenous communities who are also just doing incredible music. Like Amazigh music is just, it's beautiful, you know? So I don't think it's necessarily representative in that way. I think it's very much a system that has propped up white Arabs and has propped up a very certain sound because it sells and it has sold. And at the end of the day, people really want to make money in that way, and that's fine. I would argue that they could also make money doing everything else, but hey,
I know.
what do I know? So yeah.